Today we're going to be doing intermediate. I'm going to show you traditional grip and I'm going to show you bend. This is Clayton Skinner. Welcome to another episode of Beyond the Beat. Hello there. My name is Clayton Skinner. In this episode of Beyond the Beat, I'm going to teach you some 6/8 drum grooves. And we're going to be adding bass drum to all the 16th notes. So let's get started. 6/8 is a compounded time signature. It's very similar to the 12/8 time signature, whereas you're just basically cutting the bar in half. If you remember when the explanation that I gave in the 12/8 lesson, I gave you an explanation as to what a compounded time signature is. Compounded time signature is a time signature that does not necessarily depict how many beats are in a bar. There's not 12 beats in a 12/8 time signature. There's not 6 beats in a 6/8 time signature. If you remember from the 12/8 video, if you haven't seen it, go back and watch it. It's great. I do say so myself. Anyway, you will remember that a 12/8 time signature is made up of 4 groupings of triplets. Now, because triplets are not technically true eighth notes, we have a grouping of 4 of those triplets. Each one of those groupings represents a beat. So basically, 12/8 time signature means that you have, because it's compounded, it is actually only 4 beats, not 12, 4. 6/8 time signature, we cut that bar in half. So now you have 6 notes, 2 sets of triplets. Each one of those triplets, or each one of those notes, is not a beat. The 2 groupings of triplets are the beats. So in 6/8, you have 2 beats per bar. We'll get into this a little bit more. Next, I'm going to teach you how to count it. Now, there's obviously more than one way of counting this. I'm going to give you the easiest way of counting. This is how I learned how to count it. The 12/8 time signature, you just basically counted the triplets. 1 and a, 2 and a, 3 and a, 4 and a. With 6/8, 6/8 is actually easier for me. It might be easier for you if you actually count all of the eighth notes. There's 6 of them. If you count them, you just label them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is usually the best way to do it. It's not the only way to do it. It's just one way to do it. And if it's easy for you, use it. In this episode, I'm specifically going to be adding bass drum to the technically 16th notes, which will be the notes between the 6/8 notes. 6/8. Yeah. So, usually we count 16th notes, 1 E and a, 2 E and a. Because we're going to be labeling each one of these 8th notes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, we can then call the 16th notes in between these numbers, we can call them and. This will get confusing. I know, it's weird. But it's, like I said, it's the best way to do it. Or in my opinion, it's the best way to do it. So now, adding notes between those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, you'd be just going 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 and. I know I'm babbling, but anyway, I just hope you're able to make sense of what I'm saying. Okay, so let's get started with beat 1. Okay, so but first off, though, before we get started, actually, I want you to just take a look at this. Beat 1 has a bass drum on 1, the and of 3, and then we have a snare drum on 4. Now, if you were to remove that 16th note on, just visualize this. Remove the 16th note from the and of 3. You have just the bass drum on 1, and then the snare drum on 4. Snare drum. What that's giving you is the 2 beats in the bar. You have the bass drum, 1, 2, 3. And then you have the snare drum on 4. 4, 5, 6. Bump, bat, bump, bat. And then there's your 2 beats for the bar. That's what creates the compounded feel. If you don't compound 6/8, basically what it turns into is 3/4. Because if you think about it, if you have 3/4 time signature, 3/4 meaning you have 3 quarter notes per bar, you subdivide those 3 quarter notes in half, you get 6/8 notes. So that's why 6/8 is generally a compounded time signature, because if you don't compound it, if you don't put that snare drum on the 4th 8th note, creating that 2-beat feel, it's just 3/4. So, yeah. Okay, now, exercise 1, like I said already, we have the bass drum on 1, the end of 3, and the snare drum on 4. So we count this 1, 2, 3, and 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, and 4, 5, 6. So just listen to it, and listen to my demonstration and give it a try. Beat 2, we have the bass drum on 1, the snare drum on 4, and then the bass drum again on the and of 4. So now it's going to become directly after the snare. The first one was just before the snare, the bass drum, 16th note bass drum, was just before the snare, and in exercise 2, it's just after the snare. Yeah, should be easy. Give it a try. Beat 3 is basically just 1 and 2 put together. You have the bass drum on 1, the and of 3, snare drum on 4, and then bass drum again on the and of 4. So now you have a bass drum, 16th note bass drum, happening just before the backbeat on beat 4, and then you have one 16th note bass drum on directly after the backbeat on beat 4, sorry, the and of 4. Just look at the PDF. Listen to what I just said a whole bunch of times. It might make sense. And then give it a try. Beat 4, I'm adding a 16th note bass drum on the and of 2. The bass drum will remain on 1, and the snare drum will remain on 4 again. So we'll have 1, 2, and 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, and 4, 5, 6. Give it a try. Beat 5, we're going to be adding the bass drum to the and of 5. So it'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. 1. Rock and roll. Beat 6 is just number 4 and number 5 put together. You have the bass drum on 1, the and of 2, snare drum on 4, and then the bass drum on the and of 5. So if you have any problems with this one, just go back to those last 2 exercises and then put them together. And then you get 6. Take some extra special care when you're practicing these. Make sure you use a metronome, obviously. Playing in a compounded time signature is often a little bit trickier than playing in a regular time signature because there's a little bit more space between the beats. In this particular case, it's like a 6/8 or a 12/8. You're playing 3 whole notes for every quarter note. So it's a little bit trickier to actually maintain a feel and to maintain an actual solid pulse while you're playing the grooves like these. You may not realize it, but trust me, when you start practicing with a metronome, you'll really see how your tempo can really shift around if you're not fully comfortable with playing this stuff. So use a metronome, try it with a 6 count, at first. When you get comfortable with it, try to do it with a 2 count. So like a 1, 2, 1, 2, and then obviously play the proper notes between those 2 pulses, and yeah, just have fun with it. This is a really fun, this is pretty much one of my favorite ways of playing. I love playing 6/8. It's just, there's so much more you can do rhythmically with this. I don't know. It's hard to explain, but maybe you'll feel the same way. I don't know. I'm babbling. It's just, yeah, get out of here. Well, I hope you enjoyed this episode. Make sure you stay tuned for part 2 of adding 16th note bass drum hits to 6/8 rock grooves. If it's like 2013 and you're watching the movie or video from 2011, well, right on. Good stuff. Wonder how many videos I'll have then.